We know that Zach has played awful football, hence the benching. What we want to know, more from a national perspective, you know these coaches, the staffs, you know the resumes, you know the connection. One of the things that me and Tiki strongly surmise and have for a while is that the staff around him is not ready to elevate him. He was not a polished product when they drafted him. They got a bunch of young coaches around him. Do the Jets even have the staff to pull him out of this abyss, Ian?
Well, I would say one of the main issues here, is that this staff has had some success with other quarterbacks. Joe Flacco has had his time. Mike White has had some time. I would say that's one of the main things is that while Zach Wilson has struggled in the same system, the other quarterbacks have not. So is it the staff or is it Zach Wilson not learning or is it him not being in the right system? Like, there's both.
Well, Ian, let me interrupt you. Obviously, for a second, Joe Flacco is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. He's been in the game for a long time. We might think Mike White is young, but Mike White was drafted in the 5th round in 2018. He's been around the game for a little bit of time. So when you come in and you're saying, hey, do this is last season, Mike LaFleur obviously goes up to the booth because he didn't want to be on the sideline any longer. He starts seeing things differently. Mike White has some success. Jermaine Johnson has some success.
Not Jermaine, not Jeff. The other,
whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Whoever
Josh
they brought, Josh Johnson has some success. This isn't a question about Zach Wilson in this system. It's Zach Wilson being developed fundamentally because Robert Saleh said that multiple times. The fundamental development of a quarterback has to happen at some point. I don't know how it's gonna happen in the middle of a season because he's basically the practice squad quarterback at this point. Like, how is he gonna get back to being who he is? And the question BT was asking, is this the right staff to do it?
Well, I mean, I think the question of who he is probably a better question because if Zach Wilson was not drafted in the top 3, what would we think he is? Like, he's got arm talent. We all saw it at his pro day. Mm-hmm. But if you watch him, it has not been good. None of it's been good. And if he wasn't drafted where he was drafted, then we would not be giving him the kind of rope that he's been given. So I think, everyone sort of evaluated him in college. You look at the intangibles, you look at the tangibles, you look at the arm strength, all those things. You decide he's something. At what point do you say he's not what we thought? And actually it's on us as the evaluators rather than him. Like, I hear he works very hard. Yeah. He's diligent. He tries. He does all the right things. Everything has been bad. So at what point is it like, all right, and it's not just the Jets. Like, this is not an indictment of the Jets. Everyone thought he was a top 3 quarterback. Everyone. Mm-hmm. So maybe everybody was wrong. And it doesn't happen very often. Josh Rosen is the last that I can remember. But sometimes everyone is just wrong.
Yeah, but the similarity is that Josh Rosen was also on a Steve Wilkes staff that had no business trying to develop a young quarterback. And ultimately, that's what I'm getting to. Right? It matters where you go. It matters where you get drafted to. If you have the right coach. I mean, Peyton Manning sucked as a rookie, but you know what? Bruce Arians was an unbelievable quarterback coach, and he turned him into who he is. Now, obviously, he had a different pedigree than Zach Wilson does, but that's my point, right? Who's developing you matters, especially for quarterbacks.
Agreed. No, and I think this is, not something that I think anybody wants to talk about, but it's one of the most unfortunate things that happened to the Jets and to literally anyone who knows him is Greg Knapp's passing.
Yeah, of course.
He is a veteran coach, a great quarterbacks coach, a great guy, was literally the guy to come in and develop him. Unfortunately, passed in a tragic accident last year, and that was terrible for every reason. Football reasons, it hurt Zach Wilson, obviously, and I think they tried to bring in John Beck, his quarterbacks coach, to fix him and to help really give him that tutelage. That worked for a little bit, but nothing has worked. And I think Mike LaFleur is a really, really good young coach, but your question isn't a bad one because it is something else that it's like, you have to take this thing that we have and mold it into a great franchise quarterback. And, nothing has worked. So
I got you. I want to run through a few more things here. Ian Rapoport, of course, with us on the Fan Tiki and Tierney show. So, inner dynamics of the Jets organization. Take us behind to the place that I'm going to get us right now. So when you bench a kid who takes second overall, it is a massive monumental shift in organizational philosophy. Do you know or believe that Robert Saleh had full latitude to do this? Was this a Woody Johnson voice? Was this a Joe Douglas, a collaborative? What was it?
It feels like everybody was on the same page here. Like, the play had been really bad. And I think, again, like if you take away where he was drafted, you couldn't do this. You couldn't do this to the locker room. I would say in entirety in the NFL, you have different quarterback situations. You have the Colts, for instance, where Jim Irsay was clearly like, we need to move on from Matt Ryan, and it ended up torpedoing Frank Reich and basically knocking him out of the job. This is not like that. This is about the locker room. This is about a really good product on the field. It is about a good roster, except for a quarterback. And the players know, like this, what we talked about before, like when there is a serious situation, when someone is being benched, the players all know. They all know that this should not be their starting quarterback right now. So this is no one forcing Robert Saleh to do it.
Yeah.
For me, Saleh was very, very much on the same page with everyone in the organization, knowing that this was the right call.
But do you think this happens if he doesn't take a pass on accountability post-game press conference? Like, I think that, and the tape is awful. Nobody's saying it's good. I thought that was the impetus behind where you had to do this.
I don't. But what I do think it did was it took it from a local story where you guys were debating and talking about how bad Zach Wilson is and he's terrible and all that, to a national story. Zach Wilson not taking accountability made it a national conversation. So my sense is that Saleh was going to move on from Zach Wilson anyway. Might it have been this week? I always thought yes, but you never know. Could have moved on the next week, whatever. Could have given him one more chance. Him not taking accountability at that press conference, and no teammates supported him. None. Yeah. When you look in the media, did anyone say like, hey, ease off, this is our guy? I don't see, like, no. It's sort of like people will say derisively, like, read the room, Robert Saleh clearly read the room, and it seemed like everybody knew this needed to happen. And the post-game comments did not help one bit.
Yeah, not at all. Let me sneak to the Giants real quick. Who the hell is starting at offensive line? All these guys they're so beat up with the New York Giants playing on a Thursday night. It's another reason to hate Thursday night football, even though this is a Thanksgiving one and somewhat special.
Fun to watch, though.
It will be fun to watch, but the reality is it puts the Giants in a very compromised position, and especially at a time critical to them, where Odell Beckham sweepstakes is kind of happening, right? He's visiting the Cowboys. He's visiting. I think he's also visiting the Giants. It's almost a worst case scenario for the Giants right now.
Yeah, it's tough, and this is sort of what I feared. You guys know there's a lot of good feelings I have for the Giants. I'm really impressed with what they've done. The coach, like the GM. It is a really good staff. Everything's been positive. You just sort of hope that there's no crashing to earth. And, last week wasn't catastrophic at all. It was just a loss. But they are pretty shorthanded. And, with Odell out there, he's watching. If the Cowboys light it up on Thanksgiving, he's going to visit a couple days later.
Yeah.
Know that, he's noting all of this. So I think they're going to be okay because they play real hard, they play well, and they never get blown out. But I do fear that once the offensive line starts to have those significant injuries, the cracks can kind of start to show. I'm on the same page, and it's not a great situation for the Giants.
All right. Well, listen, hopefully Giants maybe overperform expectations. Some more big dogs, as we know, 9.5 points right in that vicinity. But we'll be watching. We'll be hoping the Giants are able to give us a good game. Happy Thanksgiving, buddy. We'll talk to you next week, Ian.
I look forward to it. Happy Thanksgiving,
Thank you, Ian. Happy Thanksgiving.
There you go.